Well, tēnā koto katoa. Welcome, everybody. It's great to have so many of you joining and showing an interest in artificial intelligence. My name is Stephen Moe, and I'm a partner here at Perryfield, and I'm lucky to have Luke Pease here as well.
Hi everyone.
We will introduce ourselves in a second, but I just wanted to start with my pepeha. No America ho no te tematanga, no Norway, Holland, Panama, France, England, no Horana, no Ingarani oku tipuna, ko te taita te manga e te ne toku nakau, ko Waitaki te awa e mahia aku maharahara, ko Otatahi toku kainga inai nei, e roia toku tunga mahi o Perryfield Oilers, ko Stephen mo toku ingoa, no reira ngā mihi kia koto katoa. Yeah, it's really great to have so many of you here. Thank you for joining and people still continuing to join, which is awesome. We're really looking forward to this session. Just before we get underway, brief background. When I opened my mouth, you heard my accent, and that's because I'm from America originally. Moved to New Zealand about, well, a long time ago. I was 7 years old. So my accent is not a true indication of where I'm from and where I've grown up. Grew up here in Christchurch, became a lawyer and worked in Wellington for 3 years, worked in London, Tokyo, Sydney, came back 10 years ago and have developed a practice which is really focusing on impact and purpose. And that means we help clients right across the spectrum from charities to businesses. And so we have about 100 people in our firm as well. So we do property work, we do disputes work, and we do corporate commercial work and have a unique focus on charities as well. So that's a little bit of background on myself. Luke, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name's Luke Pease. I am a junior law clerk at Perryfield, about to get admitted next week, actually, which is exciting.
Congratulations.
Thanks. I don't have a polished mihi with me prepared today, but yeah, super excited about AI and its impacts on organizations. At university, I did a couple of papers on artificial intelligence and actually wrote my dissertation on the topic and its interplay with copyright law. And actually, I'm also the AI officer at Perryfield, designated AI officer. So,
Which is something we may come back to during the session is what has your organization done when it comes to AI? So it's great that you're here, Luke, because two things to point out. He is our AI officer. So have you got one in your organization? But secondly, we owe a debt of gratitude to Luke because it's his enthusiasm for this topic, which really sparked me to say, well, let's do a paper on it. Let's run a session. So thank you, because
thank you.
otherwise we wouldn't be doing this. And leading on from that, we do have this paper. We're going to send this out. We're going to go through what it says, but we will follow this up with an email that has where you can download this paper. If this is of any benefit to you, then it would help us and hopefully help your networks and connections to share it and tell people, hey, here's a paper, here's some thought about what AI might mean for organizations.
Mm,
And the core of it is how do we stay safe? How do we keep ourselves safe as organizations, as board members, as employees, as volunteers?
mm,
What does it look like to have a really proactive approach to AI? There's a lot in the media right now, but what does it look like for your organization to really think proactively? So we
mm.
hope that this paper will maybe spark discussions. Maybe it becomes a board item at your next meeting, or maybe it's shared more widely. And obviously that helps us to get the word out because you know people that we don't know. So in the invite, you'll have seen I put connect on LinkedIn. I use LinkedIn a lot. When you get the paper, if you're willing to share it and tag me in, I will like and comment. So it's kind of a mutual win-win that you're helping your network as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to run through some topics on this in this paper.
Mhm.
And I think we'll just have a bit of back and forth discussing. As we do this, those of you who joined at the beginning, we asked what's the weather like where you are and where are you based? And the real reason for doing that is we wanted to test that you know how to use the chat function. And we know that you do because a bunch of you put comments. So as we're going, please send us your questions. Please send us your comments. You might know we're talking about something and you're like, oh, there's a website that's relevant here. Please add it into the chat. This is a learning journey for us as well. We would love to hear your perspectives. And also, we would love to hear your most challenging questions.
Hmm.
The take we're coming to this with is the legal side of things. So push us, ask us hard questions, throw something at us we've never heard before. We would really love that challenge. So please,
Hmm.
this is as interactive as it can be, but please use the chat. So Luke, maybe can we just start? This is really high level.
Yeah.
What are we talking about when we're talking about AI and like what is an LLM? Maybe you can just
Yeah, sure.
explain, we're at the high level here and then we're going to get into detail, but what is it?
Sure. So AI or artificial intelligence is a system that is used for in various applications. So a lot of you would have heard about ChatGPT, which is an AI system. And many of the commonly used AI systems are built off LLMs or large language models. So ChatGPT is an example of a AI system that is fine-tuned off, I think it's actually multiple large language models to produce outputs
Mm.
and kind of generate a question answer response. And so there's many. So image generation AI models won't use LLMs to produce images, but any AI system that is um, using a question answer feature where you input a question and it provides you with an answer is um, built off an LLM.
So when we're talking about AI and artificial intelligence, in my mind, there's two levels of this. The first one is what you're talking about, which is it's an algorithmic type of tool,
Hmm.
which is then going out and looking at probably everything that's been written that's
Hmm.
accessible to it
Yeah.
out there, and it's going through very quickly and pulling out bits of it and then presenting it, as opposed to the true sci-fi version of AI,
Yeah.
which would be it's able to think for itself. There's a
Yeah.
distinction there, isn't there?
Yeah, so what we use now and is being super popular and commonly used is artificial intelligence systems. What Stephen is referring to is something called AGI, which is artificial general intelligence, and that is the sci-fi, um,
The robots
the
making.
robots, yeah, where they can feel things and learn things and operate more autonomously than an artificial intelligence system. So I mean, this paper is really based around just the artificial intelligence. I'm not aware of any AGI that actually exists yet. Um, and it's tailored around how do we as organizations maximize the efficiencies that AI systems can produce. I know we've done lots of work in ChatGPT efficiencies, helping us draft emails, etc., if that's an option, and also dictation, artificial intelligence apps, etc. But how do we leverage the efficiencies that are possible through AI whilst also ensuring that our organizations are kept safe from the risks? Because there is so much that we don't know, and unfortunately, it's almost like to trace back where ChatGPT got its sources from and an AI system got its sources from, you almost need another artificial intelligence to actually do that process. And so,
Mm.
um,
So the perspective we're bringing here is as lawyers, we
mm,
want to keep you as safe as possible. My view of AI is that it's another tool, and I find it helpful to talk about it like a tool. In other words, some of us will remember when Google came, or when a fax machine came, or when email was introduced. Those are fundamental changes to how we used to work, but you adapt to them. You work out, well, how can I use this as a tool? So my opening point from keeping safe from a legal perspective is, has the organization that you're part of drafted or got an AI policy? So that's something that we've adopted now. It's about a year ago, I think,
mm,
or a while ago. But this is my thought-provoking initial question for each of you is, do you have an AI policy for your organization? If you don't have one, then how will your staff and your volunteers and your board and everyone involved know what's acceptable and what isn't acceptable?
Mm,
So that's kind of an opening thing that I'd like to get out. And one way I think that you could add value, because each of you has an important role in your organizations. One way that you could add value is to develop an AI policy regarding how it's used by your organization.
mm.
And that's something that we've got now, isn't it?
And I think it is important because, I mean, as we will be discussing in this webinar, there are some real risks with how we can potentially use AI systems. And I mean, we are going to discuss potential use of AI in employment processes and even in taking board minutes. That can create some real risks for an organization if it's not properly managed with human oversight.
Yeah.
And so our policy uses a risk-based classification of this way of using ChatGPT is high risk and could lead to these concerns for Perry Field, whereas this usage of ChatGPT is low risk. And so you know, there's different ways you can frame it, but
Yeah.
a risk classification I think has been helpful for us.
Yeah. And we then, if somebody wants to use AI as a tool, they have to go through a bit of training with Luke, and you sit down with them and run them through, okay, here's what you can or can't do. But they also have to have read the policy itself and understand. And we're going to get into the reason why this is really critical, which is about data protection and privacy. So
Mm,
we might turn to that one.
mm,
Just before we do that, though, I want to make one point, which is AI uses lots of energy to create its answers, which is kind of a philosophical point, isn't it? Because we were chatting before we started recording, like how many of you or people have used it to make a picture of unicorns drinking marshmallow rivers, like it's just complete fantasy type things. Every time you ask an AI to do that, it actually takes energy to create that answer or that thing. So there is almost, I don't want to make this too grandiose, but there's almost a moral question here of what do we use our AI for? Because there is a cost somewhere, because it's a lot of energy to create the answers.
mm.
Anything you want to add on that point?
Mm. Yeah, well, I think I heard a thing the other day. I don't know where I read it somewhere, but asking AI system like ChatGPT, please, in your prompts apparently uses millions and millions of I don't know the measure of energy, but a lot of energy, even by asking it please, because you don't necessarily need to ask ChatGPT please and thank you. And so that is
Mm.
interesting.
Because
There are,
it's the processing power, isn't it, of the
yeah.
computer, and that takes energy to run.
And there are, yeah, I think you're right, Stephen. There are environmental impacts to how we use any technology, but
Yeah.
artificial intelligence
Yeah.
is
So we're not going to
important.
dwell on that one, but we are working on a article about it. I just mention it because I think these are important things for us to think about as we start adopting new technologies. But the biggest one, we've got six of them that we're going to run through. The first one is data protection and privacy.
Mm,
So I'll frame this really briefly, which is when you use ChatGPT or when you use a large language model, where does that information come from? And most importantly, where does the information that you're inputting go to? So you easily get where I'm going here. If you're taking confidential and sensitive data from your organization and asking ChatGPT, please summarize this document, it's going somewhere, and it's not always clear exactly who might be able to access it in the future. So it's just something, this is probably the most critical thing to think about is the privacy aspects of using AI. Where is it going to? Because it's probably going out into the large language model world, and it might be accessible as well. The reason that this is particularly relevant for us in a law firm is that we have extremely strict duties of confidentiality to our clients. So I'm
mm,
sure many of you are actually our clients on this call. I'm sure that you would not be happy if we were taking sensitive client information and plugging it into an AI and saying, can you summarize the key issues in this, 50 pages? So it's really a heightened focus for us, but I also want it to be a heightened focus for all of you to consider, wow, what is the data that we're putting in and where is it going?
Mm.
Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think we've had a couple of clients come to us just to ask what do the terms and conditions of these AI systems that we're using actually mean? Is this AI system collecting, storing, processing, potentially using the information I put into it, or is it ring-fenced and disposing of the inputs I put in? And so there are systems where the AI system won't learn off the information you input,
Yeah,
and it will ring
there
fence
can
and
be
dispose.
closed systems, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it will purge the information you put in. But it is, it really pays to read those terms and conditions because, as I said before, I mean, some AI commentary refers to trying to track through the sources of outputs, AI outputs, as a black box, unexplainable.
Mm.
And so, yeah, read the terms and conditions or get us to have a look as well.
Yeah, it's something that we're helping a lot more people with. And then the other side of this, which I didn't use the word privacy, explicitly here, but the private information, if you have clients or you've got names of employees or you've got addresses or dates of birth and you're inputting it in, where is it going? And is this going to potentially be breaching
Mm,
the privacy principles set out in the Privacy Act 2020? And that's particularly important now because I used to say the Privacy Act 1993, and now it's been updated. And one of the key updates is if there's a breach, you need to proactively notify the Privacy Commissioner. So it's something to be, we're just wanting to put things on your radar. And it's all about being proactive. How are we using the data? Where is it going? And the other thing is related to this, have you got consent from people when you're
mm,
collecting their data? I know this isn't quite the AI point, but when you collect data from customers or others, do they know that you're using it in the way that you use it? Because they should, and they should have consented. So it might be something that you need to refresh
mm.
privacy policies and other things. Yeah.
And I mean, the thing as well is New Zealand at the moment doesn't have any AI regulation in force. There's no specific bespoke AI legislation. I mean, we've had a couple, the Ministry of Digital, Minister, oh, I think it was Judith Collins, um, through NBIE, she's put out a couple of statements as to how New Zealand intends on regulating AI. But
Yeah.
at the moment, we've got no bespoke legislation. Um, I know the EU has an EU AI Act now, which also uses a risk-based classification
Yeah.
for AI usage. But because we are in a country with no bespoke AI legislation, it's important that we are understanding the interplay between our current legislation that we have and how that will be triggered with this new technology that we're using. And so, yeah, the Privacy Act.
Because it's a little bit unknown at the moment, isn't it? It's likely at some point that there will be some sort of legislation brought in, but we're in
Mm,
an intermediate stage
mm,
where it hasn't been. And in the paper, we've outlined what the New Zealand government has said. It's a section called the sources, so you'll be able to read that in detail. And we've also put in references to what's been done in the EU, Australia, the UK, and the US. Um, yeah, so we're in an interesting stage of what's out there and what isn't.
mm,
So that's data protection and privacy. From my perspective as a lawyer, I want to keep you all as safe as possible. This is probably one of the number one things that I want you to at least go away thinking about how we use AI and what does it mean for our organization. The second one, should we do that one?
yeah.
IP. So intellectual property, um, who owns what's out there? Um, IP is a term, intellectual property. It's a term which gets used a lot It's easier if it's like a trademark because a trademark is on a register and you can say, well, that's the trademarked name, Perryfield Lawyers, we've trademarked it and there's the logo. But when it comes to other material, that's basically gets copyright the moment it's created. So there can be a question here about ownership of things which are generated by AI. For example, and this is just to show you the complexity here, is the outcome owned by the person who typed in the prompt? Is it owned by the company that provides the AI service? Is it owned by the sources where the LLM drew from to create the document or the image? So there's a number of questions there when it
Hmm.
comes to IP and ownership. And it might pay to think that through in terms of, are we going to be relying on this new logo that was created by AI? Do we actually own it or not? So
Hmm.
anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, this is an area which is, I mean, I don't know if you may have heard of Stephen Thaler. He's been doing some work in this area. He's a computer scientist who developed an AI system which was actually an inventor of technology. And so this AI system invented something, and then he has gone around the globe trying to get a patent registered to the AI system so that, the AI system is the owner of the invention
Right.
rather than the person who created the AI system. And so it is an interesting area. And the law has been interpreted and it's been differently interpreted in Europe, differently interpreted in Australia, and it's led to different outcomes. And I think he's even tried it in New Zealand. So it is an interesting area. There is possibly unclear IP ownership in New Zealand as the law stands now. And so it will be important in an AI policy to talk if my employee develops something using artificial intelligence, am I the owner as employer,
Yeah.
or is my employee the owner, or is the AI system the owner? It is an interesting area.
Yeah. Basically, this topic touches on so many aspects of law. So you just mentioned employment, and that
Mm,
would be something you may want to consider looking at your employment contracts or contractor agreements. What do they say about this? Who owns material that's been created? So
mm,
um, again, we're sending this paper out, so you'll be able to go into where what we talk about here. We're just highlighting the key things. The next one, from my perspective, and keep the questions coming, by the way. We're going to get through these and then we're going to turn to those. So I see that there's been a few, which is great. And but we welcome more questions. Please push us with your hardest questions. We'll do our best to answer. So the next one is just to be, this is more of just be aware of it. But AI itself can suffer. Well, the first thing is it can suffer from hallucinations. That's what they call it when it makes things up. There's a kind of infamous case where a lawyer appeared before a judge in America and quoted a case as being the grounds for why his client was guilty or not guilty. And the judge could not find that case because the AI had hallucinated it, made it up. So it's very important that if you are starting to rely on AI generated content, that you're actually verifying that it is accurate. And I know in the UK, I think they've just come out with some guidance for lawyers,
mm,
which is saying, I think that was in a case actually, don't just rely on what the AI has said. You need to be very clear. But that leads us, the hallucinations is one danger, but the other danger is that it can have bias in itself. So there can be a bit of a bias towards certain stereotypes when you're coming to use AI. So we're not going to spend a lot of time on this. I think it's pretty obvious. If you typed in, please show me the image of, and then fill in the profession, what would AI show you? And versus what the reality is. And usually there's way more diversity than what the algorithm might think based on the content that it's looked at. So
mm.
it might show a white middle-aged man is the normal for a particular profession. But actually, we all know that it's incredibly diverse and it's very unfair to say this is the only type of person who is, that
Mm,
particular occupation. So I don't think we need to go into that one anymore, but I
mm,
just wanted you to be aware of that. Don't just assume that the content you're getting is 100% accurate, and also don't assume that there's not some bias built into it based on the content that it's giving you the answer from. The next one, you kind of touched on this, the regulatory compliance and governance. Is there anything
mm.
else you want to say there? I guess this is a kind of watch this space, right?
Yeah, I think we've talked about how Perry Fields appointed an AI officer and designated that role to me to have a look at how's the New Zealand law and are there any bespoke New Zealand regulations? What is the government coming out with? How are they going to regulate this technology? And I think that is important if you're a organization that is using AI systems a lot
Yeah.
because the law is uncertain at the moment. And I mean, when you read this paper, you might come out with more questions for us
Yeah.
about the law interplay with AI, but it is uncertain, and so it is important to have your finger on the pulse, especially if you're relying on the outputs or making decisions with AI or,
Mhm.
depending on your usage case.
Yeah. So your role, just to unpack this and make it really practical as possible, your role as the AI officer,
Yeah.
you're training new people who
Yeah.
join, is that right?
Yeah,
And
training new people who join. I try to keep up to date with the developments in the space and the legislation in force or commentary that's being put out by other law firms, but also by, the Ministry of Business, Innovation
mm,
and Employment. And then also having my finger on the pulse to see if there are any other AI systems that may be useful in our organization
right.
that we're
So
not currently
there
using.
might be a new tool that
Yeah.
we could potentially use or
And
yeah.
investigate
Yeah.
and work through.
Yeah. And I think that's important maybe just to spend a moment on that because there are constantly new innovations. One that I've found really helpful, a shout out to them. It's a company based down here in Otatahi, Christchurch called Contented. And I'm now using that product to transcribe. Some of you will know I do a podcast called Seeds. I can upload the audio, which usually they're an hour-long interviews with inspiring people. I can upload the hour-long interview, hit a button, and within literally 5 or 10 seconds, it's returned to me an accurate transcript of the entire session. It's given me the themes that were discussed during that hour. So, what are the three key themes that we talked about? It's giving me a draft of a social media post. It will give me a short version and a long version. I don't use those fully, but I might integrate bits of them. And it's also giving me an article summarizing the entire conversation in an article format. So that's something that, again, we're talking about tools. That's
Mm.
pretty useful.
Yeah.
If some of you here might have a podcast, that's an amazing thing because rather than it just being an hour-long audio and then people listen to it, I'm starting to realize that I could tap into that because I've done 447 conversations. If I could get all those transcripts and they're accurate, that could become a book, like
Mm.
it would be pretty easy to reshape it into other content.
Mm.
So don't limit yourself just to thinking, I'll use ChatGPT to ask it questions that I don't know. Like there might be applications of it that would be helpful for your organization in other ways. Yeah.
Mm.
Any other thought?
Yeah, and I think that is a perfect use case for an AI system's efficiencies because, well, I'm presuming that people doing your podcast, you've obtained their consent to publish
Yeah.
the information. Um, and so there isn't any issues because that information, that podcast is already going to be in the public domain.
Yeah.
And so it's having that lens when you're um, integrating and using these systems in your organization as to what is the end output? Is this confidential information? Is there any issues with privacy, etc.? So,
Yeah, exactly. I think someone's put in the chat, what is the name of that thing? So I'll put it in there in a second. But I'm also going to put in the chat one. This is another application that may be relevant. particularly for those of you who are from charities, and I know there's a bunch of you on here. This is called Fund Sorter. I haven't been involved in the legal setup, but I know the founders, and I really think they're doing amazing things. So it's Alana and Lani and some others. Anyway, what Fund Sorter does is it will go out and look around the funding landscape, and it will identify where the funds that are available from government, local government, other charities, and it's able to help you then to craft applications that get submitted to the relevant ones. So if you're a environment focused charity, wanting to save the penguins or whatever, you could then use that to help you find where would the funding sources be and to help you craft an application. I don't recommend that you just rely on an AI generated application. I think you should go through and read it yourself, and it's a good base to develop. But that's another example of a tool that's
Hmm.
just started recently that you might find helpful. So have a look at that link if any of you are charities, and then I'll bring up the other one for Contented. So, like from a law firm perspective, what are the sort of things that we're looking at that would be helpful? Or what do we use now? Do you
Hmm.
outline?
Yeah. I mean, we've been investigating various AI systems. I know we use some legal research platforms, Westlaw and Lexis Plus, for our legal research, and they're coming out with integrated AI, and that's interesting um, to help speed up or create efficiencies in our research. And there are bespoke tools for different parts of our business. I think the dictations is something that's interesting, and I'm excited about that space. If
Mm,
there's efficiency there, provided, you know, all our professional responsibilities are being kept.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. VXT is one that is growing in popularity for law firms and recruitment agencies. And yeah.
mm,
Anyway, we've probably given enough chat. And what they do is they will transcribe conversations, phone conversations,
mm.
and then they'll summarize them, but also help with the recording of time for the lawyer. So really innovative approach. And I know those people really well because I remember the very first conversations with them when it was just an idea. They were students at University of Canterbury. They came in talking about it. All right, we're gonna finish the final two here.
Do that one.
Yeah. So the other one that we wanted to mention was with employment processes. So what type of things do they need to think about employment wise and using
Yeah.
AI?
Um, I think, I mean, it is a high risk usage if you're using an artificial intelligence system to review CVs coming in, especially if you're a large organization that might get hundreds of applicants
Right.
for a specific job. We've touched on the bias and potential possible discrimination. And so it is potentially high risk if you're using an AI system to filter through employment and employment process that you
So this would
use.
be the scenario would be you have a job application
Mm,
open and you get 140 applicants and you're thinking, how can I do this more quickly?
mm.
I'll upload
Filter
them and
by
then
something.
yeah, right.
Upload and filter. Um,
But of course that's all names,
yeah,
education,
yeah,
addresses,
yeah,
privacy side. Yeah.
yeah. And I mean, but in the same breath, if you're using an artificial intelligence system to create a job advertisement,
Yep.
then that's great. There's a great efficiency there as well.
Mm,
But it is something to be aware of because there are there is a greater popularity of AI tools, and there are more AI tools coming out to
mm,
streamline employment.
mm.
And so, as we've been saying, it's important to approach those conversations with the lens of what are the risks to
Yep.
our organization
Yeah.
and what is the usage.
Yeah, that's
How are
great.
we going to be using it?
Cool. Well, those are some of the things that we wanted to touch on. The other one is just the transparency side. So being open with people about how you're using it. I do a lot of presenting for the Institute of Directors about governance. I go in and help train people about risks and legal duties and things. And I know they've been very deliberate about saying this article was created with the assistance of
Hmm.
AI, which I guess it's interesting. I don't know. Do you think that will become a trend where people say we used AI for this, or is it going to be the opposite and it's just going to become assumed that
Yeah,
people will think they used AI and we don't? Will people care, I guess? I don't know the answer to that
yeah, I'm not
yet.
sure.
Yeah.
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 I think people would care if their lawyers were using AI to write our opinions or something, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Which we're not
which we're
doing.
not doing.
Yeah. Okay, so our view is that using AI can be really helpful for your small business, for your charity, for whatever organization type you come from, but you need to do it with the lens of how do we keep ourselves safe. And we hope that this paper we're going to send you and the topics will be at least touch points for you to raise with your board, with your senior manager, with your fellow staff members, or whatever to have a conversation and to say, what should our policy be about this? What should we do? And
Hmm.
if you need help on that side of things, we can probably help you with creating policies. That's what we're really good at. And if you have questions about employment contracts, we have colleagues who just do employment. And if you've got questions about, is this contract covering us in terms of ownership of IP, we can review that type of contract. So,
Hmm.
yeah. Now, the last thing I wanted to mention, then we're going to turn to the questions, is board minutes. So, this is a really fascinating one because we all got used to, during COVID, I think, got used to being online and,
Hmm.
Zoom or Teams, you can hit record and then you've got a complete record. And even on this call right here, Zoom is transcribing and it's going to give us a summary of what we talked about. But I wanted to mention this because there might be some dangers and some things to think about when it comes to board minutes and recording decisions of the board. Do you want to introduce this topic and
Sure.
maybe where we, some of the thoughts that we had there?
Yeah, sure. So recently there has been a lot of conversation and a lot of AI systems that have been being produced to make the process of recording board minutes easier. And so I'm thinking there's one called Otter AI, which is similar to your
Mm,
um, is it
Zoom.
the Zoom one,
Yep.
where it comes as a Microsoft Teams member, and this AI just sits there and will record the conversation and then transcribe and produce a board minute summary in your normal format of a board minutes, which seems, at first glance, seems like a great usage of AI because it removes the need for someone to be there taking the minutes. Everyone, all the trustees or directors can be present in the meeting, etc. But there are potential risks, especially, I mean, I work in disputes, and oftentimes if a decision is being questioned by a board, the board minutes are the thing that is being litigated the most, and we're relying on what
Right.
was the rationale behind the decision of the board in this instance. Have they breached their duties? We need to check the minutes
Right.
for the evidence. And so, although it is potentially a great efficiency, there is, I think, as is probably coming through this webinar, it's so important to have human oversight over that process because I mean, oftentimes your organization may want to be delicate as to how they and careful in their language in
Right.
the board minutes. And so blindly allowing a AI system to just produce it and then
Yeah.
circulate it um, may create unnecessary risk.
Mm. Yeah, I think it's definitely, well, it needs to be on your radar. How accurate are these minutes? And
Mm,
one of the things that I see people get really confused about when it comes to minutes of meetings, and because I do a lot with the IOD and governance, how detailed should minutes be? And my answer to that is, what were each of you doing in June of 2020? So go back 5 years. What were you doing? You could probably give me a bit of a vague, like, well, that was COVID was happening and, something else here, and I went to this wedding, but you probably couldn't tell me much detail about, on June the 11th, 2020. So my feeling is that board minutes should be accurate enough where 5 years from now, you'll be able to read them and go, the issue was this, and the board discussed this, this, and this, and they concluded that. That's the level of board minutes. What I'm seeing increasingly is that because of the ability of transcription providers to give you really detailed and accurate minutes, some people are substituting the transcripts for the board minutes. And I was in a meeting the other day where I'm on the board, so this was important to me. I want it to be accurate. And it said something along the lines of Jane commented, blah, 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 blah. Stephen responded with blah, 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 blah. Tony said blah, 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 blah. And it was like, wow, that is a really, really accurate record. That is a transcription of that meeting. That's not what board minutes should be. The secretary or whoever prepares the minutes should review the recording and should use it to help them prepare the minutes at that higher level, and
Mm.
then should be deleting the recording. And the accurate record of the meeting is the minutes that are then adopted by the board. So hopefully we're not overstressing the importance of this, but it
Mm.
is important because, as you're saying, when it comes, if a dispute ever came out, what is the board minutes? What are they going to reveal? And you actually don't want to have 100 pages about that particular meeting.
Yeah.
So
And also, if the AI system has omitted something that was discussed in the board minute and should have come through in the board minutes, at the end of the day, the liability rests with the directors and trustees,
yeah.
not the AI system for omitting or altering or missing something. So,
Yeah. And there's kind of a principle here with, I think Danica here in the chat has summarized it better than we've been able to do, which is yes, human oversight is
yeah.
key. And hopefully that's coming through as one of the principles that AI is a tool. It's really helpful, but you need to understand that tool and you need to think about how you're using it. And because my worst fear is that you just let it go and then the AI transcription service has put in something which is not actually what the directors were meaning or talking about.
Mm.
And then there's some liability claim, and that becomes a noose around their neck because nobody checked and had the human oversight. So,
Mm.
yeah.
Mm.
It's fascinating times, though.
It is.
It's not, even a couple of years ago, we wouldn't have had this. So what we're going to do now is turn to the chat. There's been some great comments. We really appreciate that. It's great to make this as interactive as possible, and that's one way. Just before we do that, in the paper at the end, you're going to see there's links to other documents and resources. As a law firm, we're trying to be quite unique in the New Zealand market in that we're open sourcing and providing lots of guides and free material. So the ones identified there is the Startups Legal Toolkit, a practical guide for entrepreneurs, capital raising, key issues for founders, social enterprise in New Zealand, doing business in New Zealand. And we also have one for charities and for-purpose groups, as I like to call them. So just be aware that there's a lot of free content there. And in the chat, I put a link to Seeds, which is the podcast I do now with, 447 conversations. Actually, just won an award for it, which was Best Ethical Reporting on Impact
Congrats.
last week. So that was pretty cool at Mindful Money. And the other thing is that I do a podcast for the IOD on governance called Board Matters. So that might be something that would interest some of you to check out as well. I'll put links in the follow-up email. We're going to send it out with the link to this recording as well. So yeah, it's good. But just so you know, there's a lot of content out there. Feel free, and I welcome your support in spreading the word about things. So are you ready for some comments? Let's see.
Yeah, it's
Keep them coming. We've got a little bit of time here, so we can go through it. All right. Here we've got a question. At what level should AI be credited when using it to create content, emails, articles? Is there an acceptable threshold? I think we
mm,
kind of covered this. It's an evolving area.
mm,
Um, I, I guess there's a bit of discretion here. I have I have taken some of, like I mentioned, the podcast I do. I've taken a summary of that where it gave me a suggestion for a social media post, and I used it as the base, but I altered it so significantly. Like it was helpful to get me thinking, like, what do I want to talk about and what should the emphasis be? But I changed it so much that I did not say this was generated by AI because I didn't feel like it had been.
Mm,
But I guess it's a important thing, and it might be in some organizations they might have not have capacity to review, and they might be putting something up.
mm,
Probably it would be best practice to say this was generated by AI. What do you think?
mm. Yeah, I think it really depends on the use, doesn't it? I mean,
Yeah,
it's great for the IOD to be saying this may have been created using AI because
yeah,
a lot of people rely on what the IOD
yeah. It's
puts
true.
out. But yeah, that is an interesting question.
Yeah. All right, we'll move to the next. This is kind of a comment. Any document we circulate, whether publicly or privately, is liable to be shared with LLMs by the recipient. Even if our organization has a policy and follows it well, once it leaves the office, it's out of our hands. Couldn't put it any better, really.
Mm,
That's one of the reasons we did this session is we want you to think about this for your organization. What does it mean that people, what does it mean when the data goes out? It's a great question.
mm,
All right, and we'll keep it coming along here. Regarding data protection, if we're using Copilot Chat and paid within our organization's MS Enterprise tenancy, logged in securely, is our AI usage data protected? Is it any different to data in emails or in other
mm,
MS applications within our tenancy?
mm.
And then same question, but using Gemini and Google Drive instead.
Mm.
Any immediate thoughts on that?
I'm not sure actually. I think we had a look at Copilot. We use Microsoft Office for everything in at Perryfield in our organization. But yeah, read the terms and conditions is what I'd say. I don't know off the top of my head for either of those things, but
Mm,
I imagine for Copilot there would be some sort of ring fencing and potentially some purging that happens for information that you input
yeah.
into it. But
I
I
think it's
couldn't.
that the way I've heard it described is open systems versus closed systems.
Mm,
So I guess it depends on what version you're using. Is it open? In other words, it does go out, or is it closed, like it's just our organization?
yeah.
But I think we'll admit we would probably need a bit more information to be able to give a definitive sort of
Yeah.
answer on that one. Okay. Oh, maybe someone's answered it here. Lisa said with Microsoft Enterprise accounts, Microsoft Copilot is secure and any information uploaded stays within our
Oh, that's
environment.
the sector.
Is a second. Oh, well, unfortunately, we're not 100% sure.
Maybe that's an
We,
article
yeah.
or something that we could
Okay. We
have a look
commit,
at.
we
Yeah.
commit, Luke commits to researching this point. And why don't we see? Well, so on our website, we're doing a new part, which is called the AI Information Hub, and we're going to be uploading articles regularly there. So I think that would be a great
Mm,
topic. Why don't we look into that and
yeah.
just see if we can give some more guidance? All right. And then, do you see AI closing the access to justice gap? Oh, what a great
Oof.
question. I would love to be positive and say yes. What do you think?
Say yes, it is closing.
Well,
Or
that it allows people to access justice. I just worry that the justice system is more fundamentally broken than AI will be able to fix. When I look at how much it costs, and you know more about this than me, to go to court, like to bring a legal claim, it's really expensive.
mm,
So it automatically rules out a vast quantity of people who need justice but can't afford it.
mm.
Yeah, any thoughts to
I think
add?
that question's a bit outside my pay grade, to be honest,
Yeah, you're
Stephen.
not going to
But
take that one.
no, it's a
It's a deep one.
that's really
I,
deep. Yeah.
I mean, in a way, it's how we began, like the environmental cost of using AI. I think that's something we can't ignore. And
Mm,
that's almost a philosophical point rather than here's a tool, use this chat thing. Like fundamentally, are we using it in a way that is damaging the planet that we live on? those are kind of deeper questions.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think that's something that we, as organizations and as a law firm especially, need to be asking the government in regulations and things, guidance that they're putting out. What is the cost? Have you thought about this?
Yeah.
Have you thought about access to justice, environmental impacts, etc.?
Yeah.
Um,
Great. All right. Isaiah's asked a great question. I knew that he would because I saw his name there. I thought there's going to be a good one from his own. He says, how do you test AI tools before permitting internal use, i.e., focus groups, expert advice? Can you actually get a vibe, etc.? Well, I have the AI officer right here. What do
yeah.
you do?
Um, we tend to use AI focus groups. So, I mean, the most recent one that we're trialing is a bolt-on AI system tool for a research platform that we already use. And so we've got a couple of people within the firm, given them access to this extra subscription, I guess.
Right.
And they've been trialing it and doing a survey. And we've been working with the AI provider. So before we even got to that point, the AI provider sent through all their terms and conditions, etc. We had a really comprehensive view at that. We got our privacy officer,
Yeah.
Rob Page, to look at that stuff and
Oh, different person, by the way.
different person, yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Privacy officer.
and made sure that it was, a closed thing, not open, etc.
Yeah.
But focus groups tend to be how we have been trialing
Yeah.
things.
So we'll get actually that property one we were checking,
Mm,
we basically assigned 3 or 4 fee earners and then they tried the tool, they reported back, and then it gets considered by our governance. Do we want to do it or not? There's usually some cost implications. So
mm,
do we think and here's something, sometimes the tool one day will be amazing, but today it isn't actually achieving what you want. So we've had a couple times where you can see the potential of it, but it just needs to get the bugs sorted out before we're going to commit to it.
mm.
So yeah, that's good. All right. And do you have a recommendation for learning how to write great prompts for AI tools? It's a
Mm.
great question. I know that there are I, right now it seems like LinkedIn, there's constantly little, do you want to write a better prompt? Come over here. So
Mm.
I don't have any one that I can recommend. Have you looked into that?
Yeah. Um,
I've had many people say to me the key to using AI well is to write good prompts. So giving it the parameters of what you're after, and even writing it, write this so that it could be read by a 12-year-old, or write this in the style of another person or something like that.
mm.
So it's definitely something to learn about, but um, I don't have a particular website that's better than others. I think there's just a lot of info out there.
Yeah, and I also think it also depends on the AI system you're using. So I think potentially all their natural language stuff is pretty good at the moment. But I mean, it might be that adding a couple of dashes to break up a paragraph in ChatGPT works really well,
Yeah,
but it doesn't have the same effect in Copilot. So
yeah.
I think that, yeah, you're right. I think there's a lot of YouTube videos
A
and
lot of
LinkedIn
info out
articles
there.
out of it.
Yeah, cool. And then thank you everyone who's given some additional thoughts on Copilot. So this, Aaron said we use Copilot, not the premium version. If you have a secure icon, the green shield, it's meant to be secure and safe, and the information stays within your organization. We use M365, and as long as we're logged in under our account, Copilot is secure. Well, that's good. We've written the
Nice.
article. I think we'll still write an article because I'm actually curious for some other, like Google and other things.
Mm,
I think it's a great question. Increasingly, clients are joining our online meetings and using transcription tools like Otter AI without asking our permission. The transcriptions are often inaccurate, so we need to go back to them to correct this. Just starting to develop a policy around this. Great. Well, Ruth, you're on the right track. I agree with you. Um, yeah. Actually, at the start of this meeting, there was a bot that said, "Can I transcribe?" And I said declined. So you can definitely, there is some power there. All right. Um, yeah, then the risk is that Copilot draws information from the internet. There will always be risks. Do you see this impacting the Privacy Act reporting requirements? Um, I guess it just depends what is happening and where the information is going.
mm.
Yeah.
And you have to be proactive. I mean, the Privacy Act now. I mean, in our paper, we've put potential a potential risk mitigation thing you can do is by conducting privacy impact statements, which are the mechanism to inform the Privacy Commissioner about
Yeah,
usage, etc.
yeah. And then there's a link to a webinar that someone said is helpful. And do you think people have over expectations on how AI can create efficiency? Yeah, I think that might be accurate.
Mm,
I do worry that people assume that it's like a replacement and instead it should be a tool. Yeah.
mm,
A good way to start is telling the AI what you want it to specialize in, and it will answer from that perspective. That's a good suggestion for prompting. And then there's some other things here that people put about the Copilot. All right, and we got one. I'm interested in the environmental aspect as well as other AI considerations. Does the environmental cost come at the point of asking and receiving an AI response or at the point of opening the AI response? If ignoring the AI response and reading other results instead, do you avoid that extra AI environmental cost? I think that this is another article, which I don't know the answer to that question, but I'd rather admit it than try to say that I do when I don't. I assume that if you've asked a question somewhere, something has had to spend time and energy creating it, whether you click on it or not. But we'll have a look at that. And then we're getting to the end here. Hi Luke, did you watch a CNBC interview from the AI conference this year? An expert was warning that some systems are now refusing to allow updates as the system determines it's a threat to them. Interesting.
wow.
Great.
I haven't seen that
Yeah.
interview. Need to have a watch.
Yeah, we'll have a look. So hopefully this has been helpful. Our intention here was to maybe provoke some thinking for you and your organizations. What is it that you've got in place? What are you missing? And also just to think proactively about AI rather than letting it be a reactive, oh, we need to do it. Somebody start using it. So
Mm,
there are dangers. We're going to hit send on this paper, probably will be tomorrow because we'll get the video uploaded as well so that you're able to share the paper and the video with anybody who'd like it. Like I said, we would really welcome, as one way of saying thank you, if this has been helpful, it would be really appreciated if you could maybe do a LinkedIn post and say, hey, check out this paper, or I just attended this webinar. Your networks will appreciate it, and obviously it helps us get word out about content that will help more people. So that's the reason for that. And
mm,
then obviously we can help you if you need support from a legal perspective. We've got 100 people. We've got about all these different areas. We also support property if you're buying or selling property or leases. We help with policies. We help with employment, immigration. We do disputes. So just bear that in mind if you're looking for a values-aligned law firm. And usually we are cheaper than some of the bigger firms. So just bear us in mind. That's all that we really ask is that when you're looking at the next legal project, consider maybe approaching us and getting a quote. And then if you don't use us, that's fine, but at least we got the chance to be part of the mix. So big thanks to Luke, who I said at the beginning was really the instigator of this. So thank you for the idea, and I'm glad that we were able to do it. We hope this has been helpful, and please watch out for further content on our AI Hub, and we hope that you have a great rest of your day.